to say good evening and welcome. I'm Rudy Davis. This is my wife, Jeannie. We're both naturopathic doctors. We've been helping people to find a really good path to health for over 20 years. So we've had a lot of experience, had a lot of interesting things that we've learned, and we're going to share all those things with you in depth as much as we can and try to keep it as simple as we can. We're going to try. Are you ready? We're going to take a look at a diet. It's actually an incredible diet. I don't like the thought of a diet, but this is an incredible diet purposely designed by God. And you're going to see why it is we've given this subject matter this title. You notice the foods? Aren't they incredible? They are absolutely beautiful. Not only beautiful, but they're very good tasting. And left in this natural state that they're in, they're fantastic for you. So let's take a look at something. Cancer deaths worldwide. In the year 2008, there was 7.6 million. 2010, 8.9 million. If you just look at it, do you see an increase? Is it getting worse? So then what we're doing isn't benefiting people. That means what we're doing as a society, as a nation. If you take a look at diabetes, for instance, the same type of statistics, 220 million in 2008, but 366 million 2010. That is a large increase, and the diabetes is just, it seems to be on a rampage. You look at all the operations that are taking place, all the heart surgeries and things, you look at all the drug medications that are prescribed, you take a look at the waiting rooms in hospitals in our cities, they're just lineups of people, and you have to ask the question, why are the incidences of all diseases escalating? What is going on? Well, I got to ask you a question. Do you get a headache because you haven't eaten enough aspirin? Is that why? Well, no, there's got to be an underlying cause. There's another reason. If the harmonious working of the system has become unbalanced by overwork, overeating, or other irregularities, do not endeavor to adjust the difficulties by adding a burden of poisonous drugs. And I want to emphasize something here. Do not endeavor to adjust the difficulties by adding a burden of drug medications. Now, right through here, what organ is this? Can anybody tell me? That's a liver. Have you ever seen what a liver cell looks like really close? Well, I'm going to show you, because it's rather fascinating as you think about it. Here it comes. They're building and building so you can see them more and more. Aren't they rather unique? They're different than, say, a heart cell or a pancreas cell. That's a liver cell. Now, you notice they don't look like this? That's a startling realization for some people. I realize it, but there's no organ in the body that's made from pills. In fact, the body really doesn't want pills. What it really wants to do is it wants to make cells. That's what it's interested in doing. And even though all the research I've done, if our body was made from, say, drug medications, it would look something like this. You see? But it doesn't. The human body's made from muscle, tissue, fibers, bones. The human body's made of living cells. So if you want to keep that in mind, take a look at this little guy. You know, he's pretty cute. That's what the human body is made from. Now here's a healthy cell and a sick cell. Can you see a difference between the two? Is it clear? I'm going to point things out to you. Right here you'll see some really good cellular structures encompassing the whole cell, preventing things from leaking out and other things from getting in. But over here, notice this. There are breakages in the outer coverage of the cell. And you can see that this cell is actually incapable of holding fluid. You cannot get this cell to hold fluid. And if the cell will not hold fluid, it will not function correctly. Now the thing is, this healthy cell can become the sick cell, vice versa. The sick cell can become a healthy cell. I hope you notice that. That is what you call good news. Because when people get sick, they want to know what? I can get better, right? The continuance of life and health is dependent upon the transfer of energy and nutrients from our foods into every cell in the body. How many cells? Every cell, every single cellular structure requires that food, nourishment, be brought into the cellular structure so that it can repair, so that it won't have the holes like you saw in the previous cellular network. And if the holes are repaired through nutrition, then you're going to have healthy cells. And if you have healthy cells, what does that add up to? A healthy body. Exactly. Now, I want you to notice, this is actually a picture of the Bismarck. How many have heard of the Bismarck? Yeah, I'm really into history quite a bit, especially World War II. History tells us there's a swastika on the deck. That ship, if I wanted to repair that ship, what would I need to repair it with? Could I repair it with nylon stockings? Would that rebuild the hull? Would that rebuild the stern of the ship if I did that? Yes or no? No. Why not? It's not made from nylon stockings. Therefore, putting nylon stockings together in any kind of shape, upside down, inside out, is not going to work to rebuild the hull of the Bismarck. We've got to use what? Steel. But did you know that steel is actually not made from steel? Now, I'm making a very important point here. Steel is not made from steel. Well, what is it made from? Steel is made when carbon, a nonmetal, is added to iron in amounts up to 2.1%. The result is an alloy known as steel. So in order to get that steel hull for the Bismarck, I've got to build the steel from something. And then it's got to be shaped, brought into position, and replace any damaged structures of that ship. Does that make sense to you? Well, you know, it's the same with the human body. Did you know that protein is not made from protein? The same as steel is not made from steel? And so people think, well, if I get protein, I've got to eat protein. No, not at all. In fact, all the proteins in our body are made from something called amino acids. And here you'll see quite a few different kinds of amino acids. These little letters, you'll notice they're not repeated in any of these structures. They're all very, very different. And they're all very necessary in order for our cellular structures to be rebuilt, made perfectly clear. Now, this is one amino acid right in here. Okay, that's one. How many different structures of amino acids do we need? Well, there's plenty. There's lots, actually. Look at all these different structural types right here. Aren't they fascinating? This would make a good scrim if you had, you know, in your house somewhere. It would look really pretty as a little backdrop or something, you know. I love the colors and things that take place in some artwork and in science, indeed. Now, nutrients cannot enter cellular structures unless they are in liquid form. You wouldn't realize how important that is. It is absolutely necessary that everything you eat is able to be made into a liquid so that you can get it into your cellular structures. All food has to be made into liquid before the body can use it. So now we've got an outline of the human body. And there we see, there's that liver that we looked at the cellular structure from. Here's the large intestine, the small intestine. We got the lungs, the heart. Stomach seems to almost be missing. That's simply because I'm going to show you that the human body is actually a juicing machine, just like this one. Now, if you're on the standard American diet, I've got a good question for you. And that is, take these foods, standard American diet foods, and tell me something. If I took these foods and I put them through the juicer, how much juice could I get out of these foods? Any guesses? None. Well, even if you got some juice out of it, would you eat it? And I always ask, why not? How come you're not eating it? You do eat the burger and you eat the chicken, but you wouldn't juice it and drink it? It's the same thing, you're putting it into your body. But your body's saying, I don't want those because I can't juice them. What is your body? Well, if you have teeth and a digestive system like this cat, you could eat those foods and they would go through your system in anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. They'd all be out and digested. The lion has 12 times more stomach acid than a human being. And if you put food down in big chunks, it is gone. I mean, the acid just boom, 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 eats it all up, and it's gone. But we don't have that kind of a digestive system. Our system works quite differently. God gave us some special foods to eat. And God said, behold, I've given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat, as it says here, but actually that word can be translated into food. For you it's food. Think maybe God knew that we were a juicing machine and needed foods that could be juiced? Well, let's just see. Does that look good to you? Because I'll tell you, that makes me hungry at any time of day when I look at that. Because those are real foods made for the human body. They're absolutely delicious and very, very necessary. Again and again, I have been shown that God is trying to lead us back, step by step, to his original design, that man should subsist upon the natural products of the earth. Among those who are waiting for the coming of the Lord, meat eating will eventually be done away. Flesh will cease to form a part of their diet. I think that's an important statement. Wow. That's from 21 Manuscript Releases 286. It says, let our people in Australia discard all unwholesome recipes and learn how to live healthfully in accordance with the directions God has given. Let them impart this knowledge as they would Bible instruction. Let them preserve the health and increase the strength by avoiding the large amount of cooking which has filled the world with chronic invalids. We are coming to the time when recipes for cooking will not be needed, for God's people will learn that the food God gave Adam in his sinless state is the best for keeping the body in a sinless state. Manuscript Releases, Volume 21, page 286, paragraph 3. And there's quite a bit of really interesting information in the Manuscript Releases for anybody who's very interested. Read them, grab the information from them, and apply them to your life. It will really add to your health and your longevity, by the way. Again and again, I have been shown that God is trying to lead us back, step by step. That's an important statement. Step by step to his original design that man should subsist upon the natural products of the earth. Natural products are not hamburgers. It's not pizza. Natural products of the earth are things that grow and need very little processing in order for us to consume them and enjoy them. Now this right here, this is a protein in meat. It's a muscle structure, actually. And denaturation of structural protein is visible through the discontinuity in cell borders and cross striations. So they see when the meat is heated, various things happen to it. In fact, heterocyclic amines are produced from heating meat, especially barbecuing. And heterocyclic amines are cancer-causing agents. Isn't that amazing when you think about it? Those things actually cause cancer. So now if you're cooking meat and eating it, what is going to happen to you? Good thoughts to have. Also, as the meat cooks, there is a physical unfolding and denaturation of the proteins in animal muscle tissue as a direct response to thermal agitation. We're going to talk about enzymes because in that particular project, the enzymes are what are destroyed in the meat. You notice when the lion eats the meat, it doesn't cook it. It just chomps down and it's gone in chunks. It doesn't even enjoy it. It just swallows it down because it needs something to live by. And so enzymes are alive in that zebra that was just killed. It's a living enzyme right there. Once it's cooked, it's dead. It's denatured. Now, an enzyme is a protein that facilitates a chemical reaction. These are all enzymes, scientific versions of enzymes, adding colors and things so you can see a good definition in them on the screen. So now we can see that when you get past 140 degrees Fahrenheit, something is going to happen to those enzymes. They're actually going to be destroyed. Bit by bit, bang, they're all gone. They start being destroyed around 107 degrees Fahrenheit. And they finish that around 140 degrees. It's all over. The life of the enzyme is gone. Now we're going to take a look at something interesting. We've got nice organic carrots here, and this will be our donut place special. We all can relate to this, right? We're going to see we have 6 different needs for eating food, or 6 different reasons why we eat food. And that is, first of all, we need glucose. Second of all, we need amino acids. Third, fatty acids. Fourth, enzymes, vitamins, and minerals. And we need also water. Now, I'm going to take you and ask you, does that carrot have water? Does it? Does it have glucose? Yes. Well, let's just run down the list and we'll see what has what and what doesn't have anything, okay? First of all, the carrot has glucose, but the donut has glucose also. So there's nothing wrong with that. Matches the 6 reasons we eat food. What about the amino acids in the carrot? It's got amino acids. What about the donut? Does it have amino acids? About 1/32nd protein. That's amino acids right there. But they're all denatured. Why? Is that donut cooked at a temperature that's less than 140 degrees Fahrenheit? Or is it slightly higher than that? Of course, it's slightly higher. Fatty acids. That carrot, believe it or not, has got fatty acids. When you juice a carrot, have you noticed it leaves an oil, a sort of a film on your juicer? That's the fatty acids in the carrot. What about that donut? Does that have fatty acids? Well, it hasn't got fatty acids. It's got fat. And the differences between fatty acids and fat is quite stark. You see, fatty acids, about half the weight of your brain is made up of essential fatty acids. Not cooked acids, essential raw fatty acids. When you cook the fats for that donut, you denature the fat and it actually becomes a toxin to your system. Now, this carrot has got lots of enzymes. What about the donuts? I'm glad to hear, nope, not the donut. Why? Because the enzymes have been destroyed. You get past 140 degrees, right? They're all gone. What about vitamins and minerals? That's almost a no-brainer. Has that carrot got vitamins and minerals? Sure it does. What about the donut? Well, see, I always tell people, they used to be in there where the hole is, but they took them out. It's gone. And I'm not telling you to go out and get Timbits. That's not where the nutrients are. You want to stay away from those kind of foods. Now, what about water? Does that carrot have water? Absolutely. But what about that donut? About 1/20th water. But look at the toxins that we have happening in here. This is organic food. This is not an organic donut. Does that carrot have toxins in it as an organic food? Does it? No. What about that donut? That donut's got toxins. The difference between a healthful food and a food that's not so healthy is that the unhealthful food is missing 1 or more of the 6 reasons why we eat food. So if it's missing 1 or more, it's actually not a whole food or a complete food for the human body. Now I'm going to take you through the citric acid cycle here. We're going to take the Tim Hortons donut and we're going to plug it into here. And we're going to see what's going to happen. This is a system which is in the cellular network of the human body. This is what happens when glucose enters its cellular level. If you take a look here, there's about 10 different points or places in the cellular network where the glucose actually is altered and changed to become something called adenosine triphosphate. And we're going to just, for the sake of brevity, we're going to give you 5 places that the glucose is going to be altered and changed. The first one we're going to come to, the body says, is there an enzyme there? And you tell me, is there? Nope. So what is the body going to do? It's going to get enzymes from an organ called the pancreas. So that pancreas now has to put out enzymes to help digest that glucose and turn it into adenosine triphosphate. It's going to help prepare it to move on to the station B right in here in the cellular structure so it can be altered again. Now here we've got missing vitamins. So what do we do? No vitamins are in that donut. There's none there, no matter what they might say. The body might say, I want to get something from the muscle tissues or from other cellular structures in the body, and I'll make that vitamin available so we can use that glucose today. So now the glucose has been altered from point A down to point B. The body's now preparing it to go out to channel C. And we're going to see what happens at C. Well, here the body might say, I need a mineral. There's no minerals in the donut, so where's the mineral going to come from? Maybe, just maybe the body says, I want to get it from the bones because there's nothing else to take it from. So now the skeletal structure of the human being is being invaded, and we're going to pull minerals out of the bones to service the needs of digesting that glucose to turn into adenosine triphosphate. So now it's ready to go on again to the next checkpoint, which is D. But here, it's missing enzymes again. And all the enzymes are different. You need different enzymes at different stages of digestion, at different stages of human metabolism. Also, there's different kinds of enzymes, different families of enzymes. You've got metabolic enzymes. You've got digestive enzymes. You've got plant enzymes. You've got all kinds of different enzymes. And they all serve a different purpose. So now, we got to take from the liver here quite a percentage of enzymes, and by the way, quite a percentage of enzymes came from the pancreas as well. So now it's ready to go to checkpoint E, the last place on its journey before it becomes adenosine triphosphate. But here, it needs another vitamin. Well, maybe the body will say, hey, it's the donut. I'll take it from the eyes. We'll put some vitamin A in there. Now it's ready to become adenosine triphosphate, and that is basically usable energy in the body. But now let's take another scenario. Let's just see what happens if we eat some good old raspberries. Anybody like raspberries? Oh, those are my favorites. I just love raspberries. So let's take a look at what happens. When that raspberry, which is raw, not in a jam, but gets raw into that checkpoint A, the body says, hey, great, I need very little enzymes from the pancreas to digest this, about 10%. Whereas that donut would have required a massive amount, could have been 40%, 50, 60%, 70% of the enzymes necessary could have had to come from the pancreas. Your pancreas should produce about 10 to 20% digestive enzymes and about 80% metabolic enzymes. Metabolic enzymes are used to make your eyes blink. They're used to make your muscles move. So your pancreas wants to produce enzymes that make your body heal itself, that help you to move. Whenever anybody is not having good success with their health, I always like to find out how much is their raw food, their fresh food, compared to the cooked food. What's the ratio? And if there's too high a ratio of cooked food, then I can see where there could be a problem happening in that system. So now, since there's very little enzymes required, that raspberry is ready to move on to station B. Now you may notice it doesn't need anything, any vitamins from the muscle tissues, because they came with the tissue itself, or with the raspberries itself. So now we see it's gone on, and it needs a mineral here. Well, it won't need to take anything from the bones. It may need a little bit of something from the liver, though, but not very much. Now, it's ready to go. You notice the difference in that? That is huge, because now there's no strain on the body to digest that raspberry like there was when you ate the donut. And so we have to think about those things as we prepare our foods. It causes us to either become acidic or alkaline, depending on what we eat. So on the bottom end of the scale, we've got a 1, which is really acidic. And on the top of the scale, this is the pH scale, we've got about a 14, which is really acidic. In the middle, you've got your 7 to 8, which is your healthful range. Now, if you're going to be eating foods of the standard American diet, then you're heading down toward the acid side of the pH scale. But if you're eating the foods that God designed for you to have, then you're heading more towards the alkaline side of things, which is putting you more in a state of health. Disease doesn't set up in the human system until the cellular pH becomes below 7. Now, if you inherit a weak kidney, then it could show up in your kidney area when you start doing things wrong. Too much of the wrong foods coming in will produce a really strong reaction to a person who's weak in that area. If you have a weak heart, if you've inherited that, that is going to happen, that you're going to have a weak heart. If you get a weak liver, you get weak bowels, it's all the same thing. The toxins always show up in whatever area is the weakest, whatever you've inherited is the weakest. But that doesn't mean that that organ has to stay in a weakened state. That organ can be rebuilt totally. So now what kind of diseases would set up when our cellular structures become lower than 7? Well, it could be heart disease, could be diabetes, could be osteoporosis, could be high blood pressure. Those are very common things. And whenever I tell people that come into my office, look, what are you eating? Oh, well, I'm eating fish. Like fish is good. I say, you're eating fish? You got to stop that stuff. Your high blood pressure, your arthritis, everything, the fish is causing that. And they'll go, huh, how could that be? We've eaten this all our life. You're going to see how that is. It is absolutely incredible. But it's hard for people to wrap their minds around that. How could this be wrong for us? Well, here's how you can gauge. Are you well or are you sick? And if you're sick, then in order to get the results you've never had, you've got to do the things you've never done. If it's requiring changing the diet, then that's what you need to do. So now these things, if you will notice, if you're heading toward this side, you're heading toward death. But if you're heading toward this side, you're heading toward life. Cancer doesn't set up in the cellular structures until the cellular pH is 5.7 or lower. That doesn't mean if your cellular pH is below 5.7 that you have cancer. It just means that if you do get cancer, it's going to spread fast. That's all that means. Let me ask you a question. If you wanted to live in this beautiful French village, and you see all the, where it is, right around the sea, and they have all the vineyards growing there, it's actually very, very pretty. Notice all the houses and special restaurants, and they serve a lot of really good food at some of these places. Now, if that was an absolutely perfect place that you just love to be, then would you have to abide by the rules that govern that place? Would you? Or would you not? What would happen if you went to live in that place that you really wanted to live in, but you didn't want to obey the rules? What would happen to you eventually? You'd be kicked out. You'd be asked to leave. But you say, but I wanted to be here. But they say, but you're not obeying the laws, so you can't be here. You know what is the same with our health? Many people want to be healthy. They want to arrive at that perfect state, but they don't want to do the things that cause health. And if you are not obeying the laws of health, then you're going to be obeying the laws of death. Disobedience to the laws of life automatically places you under the laws of death. Does that make sense to you? Make sense? Okay, so if you disobey one, you're automatically in the other by default. So in order for you to have a healthy, long life, what you have to do is obey the laws that lead to life, and you'll be taken care of nicely. But if you don't obey those laws, you are naturally placed under the laws of death. There is only one choice or another. I'm going to get Jeannie up here. It's her turn to share some things with you.
Okay, so you guys have learned about foods that will make our bodies acidic and foods that will make our bodies alkaline. What I'd like to do with you is show you some of the nutritional studies that have been done which verify the things that Rudy has been showing you. And I find these very interesting. The first one I want to show you is Dr. Pottinger's cats. How many of you have heard of Dr. Pottinger? Anybody heard of Dr. Pottinger? Nobody's heard of Dr. Pottinger? He was a medical doctor that lived around, or did these experiments rather, around the 1940s. And he took a group of cats, he took about 900 cats, and divided them up into several groups, and he watched to see what effect nutritional variations would have on their health. And here's some of the things that he found. One group of cats was fed a diet of 2/3 raw meat 1/3 raw milk, and cod liver oil. So those were the raw food cats. The second group was fed a diet of 2/3 cooked meat, 1/3 raw milk, and cod liver oil. So the difference between the two diets is one had 2/3 raw meat, the other had their meat cooked. And let's see what took place. Okay, the cats that were fed the all raw diet were healthy, while the cats that were fed the cooked meat diet developed various health problems. By the end of the first generation, the cats started to develop degenerative diseases and became quite lazy. By the end of the second generation, the cats had developed degenerative diseases by midlife and started losing their coordination. Second generation. By the end of the third generation, the cats had developed degenerative diseases very early in life, and some were born blind and weak and had a much shorter lifespan. Many of the third generation cats couldn't even produce offspring. There was an abundance of parasites and vermin, while skin diseases and allergies increased from an incidence of 5% in normal cats to over 90% in the third generation of deficient cats. Isn't that incredible? Only 5% in normal cats, but over 90% was the increase by the third generation in these deficient cats. Kittens of the third generation did not survive 6 months. Bones became soft and pliable, and the cats suffered from adverse personality changes. Males became docile, while females became more aggressive. And actually, 3 of those females were named Tiger, Cobra, and Rattlesnake. And that will give you some idea of their personality. Isn't that incredible? So those females became very aggressive. They were actually dangerous to handle. It was quite amazing. The cats eating the predominantly cooked food diet suffered from most of the degenerative diseases encountered in human medicine and died out totally by the 4th generation. I want you to keep in mind that the difference only was that the one diet had cooked meat, 2/3 cooked. The other diet the cats were getting was completely raw. That was the only difference between them. One group had their meat cooked, the other had their meat raw. To me, that was incredible when I saw what took place when the predominant portion of the diet came from cooked food. That was amazing. Well, let's carry on, because he did some further studies. Another study that was dubbed the milk study. Okay, the cats were fed 2/3 milk and 1/3 meat. All groups were fed raw meat. Okay, so this time they were both getting raw meat, with different groups getting raw, pasteurized, evaporated, sweetened, condensed, or raw metabolized vitamin D milk. So he split them up now, and he tried different milk coming in to see what effect that would have. The cats on raw milk were the healthiest, while the rest exhibited varying degrees of health problems similar to the previous cooked meat study. And let's take a look at what some of those were. So this time they're all getting raw meat, but the different groups are getting their milk either in raw or some form of a cooked, pasteurized, condensed, sweetened, condensed, so forth, okay? And here's what happened on that study. Cats fed pasteurized milk show skeletal changes, lessened reproductive efficiency, and their kittens present progressive constitutional and respiratory problems, as is evident in the cats eating cooked meats. Cats fed evaporated milk show even more damage than their pasteurized counterparts, while the most deficiencies occur among those fed sweetened condensed milk. Isn't that incredible? These cats exhibit severe skeletal deformities. They show extreme irritability and pace back and forth in their pens nervously. Isn't that amazing? Just from changing to different forms of cooked milk. So we can see what Rudy was talking about earlier. You can see what happens when we start to denature our food. Denaturing our food is when we start to heat it. And again, we want to make it really clear, we don't advocate 100% raw food diet. That's not what we're about. But what we do like to encourage people is to consume more raw food in their diet. Make the predominant portion of your diet coming from raw foods rather than the predominant portion coming from denatured, devitalized foods. And you can see from the animal studies why that's so important. Well, let's take a look now. Dr. Pottenger, he also did experiments on guinea pigs. And this is very interesting. A group of guinea pigs was initially fed a diet of rolled and cracked grain with supplements of cod liver oil and field-dried alfalfa. Okay, this was field-dried alfalfa. Soon, they showed loss of hair, paralysis, and high rate of litter mortality. Diarrhea, pneumonia, and other deficiency symptoms increased. When fresh cut green feed, this was grass that was cut after sundown, sacked and delivered before sunrise, was introduced into their diet, the guinea pigs showed remarkable improvement. Infant mortality decreased and the animals became huskier. No new cases of paralysis developed, and the alopecia, that's the baldness, lessened, though it did not disappear entirely. So they didn't progress. They sort of stopped and halted in the disease process. It didn't continue, okay? But watch what took place here. A few of the guinea pigs with severe diarrhea and loss of hair were allowed to run outside the pens to feed on growing grass and weeds. In less than 30 days, these foraging animals showed even greater improvement than those receiving cut greens inside the pens. Their diarrhea stopped. Their hair returned with a soft, shiny, velvety texture. They were healed and became well. When they were placed back inside the pens, they showed no further signs of gastrointestinal upset or other ailments. So Dr. Pottenger was quite puzzled at what had taken place here, because when they gave the earlier group the greens that had been cut after sundown, fresh greens, cut, sacked after sundown, and then brought and delivered and given to the guinea pigs before it had a chance to be out in the sun, they halted their disease process, but they didn't return to health. But these animals that actually were able to get outside and feed on the growing greens and grasses outside, they became well. So he was puzzled as to what took place there. Looking for an explanation for this more dramatic improvement in the guinea pigs feeding on the fresh growing grass and weeds, we noticed that when we put our arms inside the sacks of cut grass, the temperature inside was warmer than the temperature outside by 5 to 30 degrees. Interesting. This suggests that the sacked cut grass becomes semi-cooked and that important substances are at least partly destroyed. Isn't that amazing that such a small temperature difference could make such a large difference to the health of those animals? That was amazing to me when I came across that study. I thought that was incredible. So Dr. Pottenger's guinea pigs, they show us that even small variations of heat are actually starting to already destroy very important nutrients that we need. Sir Robert McCarson, he did a very interesting experiment here. When he fed monkeys in India their usual diet cooked rather than raw, he discovered that all of the animals developed colitis, and their autopsies revealed gastric and intestinal ulcers just from cooking their food. Very interesting. This one here is very interesting. O. Steiner in Switzerland, he cooked the food his healthy guinea pigs had been eating raw, and look at what they developed. Anemia, scurvy, goiter, dental cavities, malfunctions of the salivary glands, and when he added pasteurized milk to their daily fare, they developed arthritis as well. Isn't that interesting? What happened from cooking the food, what happened from giving them the denatured milk on top of it. Very, very interesting. This comes from Testimonies, Volume 3. Very important statement here that says, one of the strongest temptations that man has to meet is upon the point of appetite. It cannot be to the glory of God for his children to have sickly bodies or dwarfed minds. To indulge the taste at the expense of health is a wicked abuse of the senses. Those who engage in any species of intemperance, either in eating or drinking, waste their physical energies and weaken moral powers. Very, very important. We need to understand that, especially as we are nearing the close of time, that we are to live to glorify God, That is part of the third angel's message. Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment has come. And that is what we are to do as a people. And this is our wonderful opportunity that we can do. We can all have a part of this. But we have to understand that it's not to the glory of God if we have sickly bodies or dwarfed minds. It cannot be for His glory. And so therefore it is so important that all of us seek to understand our bodies and how to keep them in perfect health, or the best health that we can. So very important. Now, let's take a look at foods that produce an acid pH in the body. Rudy had mentioned to you about the acid-alkaline scale, the pH scale. Okay, 1 is very acid, 14 is very alkaline. We want to keep our bodies more toward the alkaline side of that scale. And so we want foods that will help to keep us more toward the alkaline side rather than toward the acidic side. Now, acid-producing foods, here are some key foods. Cooked grains. Cooked grains are slightly acid-producing in the body, okay? But we need to, we are not actually, we don't have digestive systems that will break down those grains in a raw form unless they're sprouted. We can get into sprouting, of course. But we are going to need to cook those grains, but they're very slightly acid producing. So those are not going to be a problem coming into our system. But we're going to move to more and more acid producing. Cooked fruits and vegetables, a little bit more acid producing now in our bodies, okay? So we're moving more acid now. Then we have dairy, okay? So now we're stepping more acid. This is moving us more toward the side of disease. Sugar, our sugars are very acid producing. They're very refined. Those are things we want to avoid. Meat. We're getting very acid producing now. All kinds of meat, whether it's fish, whether it's chicken, anything that basically had a face, a mother, or a liver, for definition purposes, that is what you can consider meat, and that is very acid producing in our body. So this is going to be causing disease to happen. This is moving us acid. Fried foods, highly acid producing. Then we have coffee and tea, and this does include green tea. There is a strong interest to have green tea. A lot of our patients come to us and they say, well, I'm drinking green tea. I'm trying to get my antioxidants. But green tea is acid producing. Green tea has as much caffeine as our other forms of tea, our black tea and our white tea, and all of those are harmful to the body. If you want to drink a tea, have an herbal tea, something like a chamomile or peppermint or something like that, which won't be harmful to your body. But green tea is something that should be avoided. Now, if you want antioxidants, great place to get your antioxidants, all of your berries. So that would be a much better place without putting something in that would be harmful. Okay? Then we have salt. Now, we need a little bit of salt. But we need to be careful on the amount that we're getting. Alcohol, very acid producing. Drugs and medications, those are very acid producing. And tobacco, so those are all extremely acid producing in our bodies. So that will give you sort of a broad idea of what the acid producing foods are. Let's look at foods now that move our bodies more toward the alkaline side of the pH scale. So these are foods now that are going to help our bodies regain their health if we've lost it. Raw fruits, wonderful for helping to move our bodies more alkaline. Dried fruits, again, we're going to talk about this very shortly, the dried fruits here, a little bit more. Raw vegetables, frozen fruits and vegetables, and again, we're going to talk about this a bit more, but frozen fruits and vegetables, these will be ideally the fruits and vegetables that you have done yourself. You know the quality then of what you have frozen, and so you will know that it's going to help move your body more alkaline. A lot of times the commercial things that we're buying are done in such mass quantity and they're not done carefully, and so they can actually move us more toward the acid side of the scale. Lightly steamed fruits and vegetables, we'll talk about that shortly. Raw nuts and raw seeds. So these are wonderful for helping move our bodies toward a more alkaline pH, helping to regain health in our systems. And sprouted grains, of course, that we mentioned earlier, if we want to sprout our grains, that as well will help move us to an alkaline pH. This comes from 9 Testimonies, page 153. Those who have received instruction regarding the evils of the use of flesh foods, tea, and coffee, and rich, unhealthful food preparations, and who are determined to make a covenant with God by sacrifice, will not continue to indulge their appetite for food that they know to be unhealthful. God demands that the appetites be cleansed and that self-denial be practiced in regard to those things which are not good. This is a work that will have to be done before His people can stand before Him, a perfected people. Amazing, very sobering as we think about those words there. A covenant with God by sacrifice. And that is something that speaks to all of us. We need to make that covenant with God, to commit to denying the appetite for those things that we know, that we've learned, that are not helpful for us. The only perfectly safe course to pursue is to stand firmly on the side of temperance and not venture in the path of danger. So let's take a look now at something called the hierarchy of food preparation. This comes from most of the information is from Dr. Joel Robbins. He's a medical doctor, doctor of chiropractic, and a naturopathic doctor as well. And this is some very interesting information that shows us where the best place is to get our nutrients from. So the very best place where we're going to get nutrients is living foods. Living foods are things that are still growing, like sprouts or baby greens. Baby greens are the greens that you're maybe growing, and you just went outside and you snipped off a bunch and you brought them in and put them into your salad, and that's what you're having, or you put them into your green smoothie and that's what you're going to have for your lunch, okay? So those are living foods. And that is where we're going to get the most amount of nutrients to cellular level. Okay, so the highest amount comes from living foods. Then we have raw and whole. Okay, so this is our banana or orange, raw and whole. We're going to get about 30% of those nutrients to cellular level. This can vary depending on what it is that we are consuming. Of course, if we're consuming things like a banana or a pineapple or even an orange, okay, where we're at here in the Vancouver area, those foods don't grow. Okay, so those have to be grown elsewhere, and they have to be shipped in. So obviously there's going to be a process of time from when that food was picked, and it's got to be picked on one end, it's got to be stored, then it's got to be transported, and then it comes to, likely a big food wholesaler, and then it's going to go to a distributor, and it's eventually going to get to the retailer, and then eventually you're going to come into the store, and it's going to be there on the shelf, and you're going to buy it, and you take it home, and you probably don't consume it right away. And so again, it's going to probably sit for a little bit of time. So you can see there's a process of time where that product was picked from its original life source, and then it has now come into your possession. There's been that process of time that's taken place where nutrition has started to deteriorate, okay? So the longer something is separated from its life source, the more nutritional loss that there is going to be. And it's going to vary depending on the food. Obviously, a potato or a carrot, things like that, they last much longer than, say, a tomato, okay? So there's going to be a difference in the food itself. But the things that we can grow and pick and consume immediately, or things that we can get locally, are going to have a much higher nutritional value. So again, this percentage can vary depending what it is. If you went out and picked that tomato, for instance, from your garden and brought that in and put that into a salad, that's going to be wonderful. That's going to be up here with living foods. You just went out and picked it and you're consuming it. So the nutrients have not had a process in which they've deteriorated, okay? So raw and whole. Then we have juiced and consumed immediately. So here's where we're going to run the carrots through the juicer, and then we're going to drink that juice down right away. It's not going to sit for a length of time. We're going to get about 90% of those nutrients to our cells. That's incredible. So this is very much like intravenous feeding. We're going to take that food into our body About 90% of it's going to get into our cells, and it goes in very rapidly. Juice is absorbed within about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on the quantity, and of course if you've strained it well to get the fiber out. So these nutrients are going to get rapidly into our cells. This is something that's very important for anyone that would like more energy. Is there anyone that wouldn't like more energy? Put your hand up. No hands went up. Okay, I'm glad. I've asked this many times over the years, and I actually did have one woman in one of our seminars that put her hand up and said, no, I don't want any more energy. I was amazed. I thought, well, I'll take yours then. I would like to have extra energy. Most people I know would like more energy. And if you would like more energy, drink fresh juice. Add that to your daily program, because you're putting all of that nutrition in and it's going rapidly into your cells. And you will find in a very short time, many of our patients within a week come back to us and they say, I cannot believe the energy that I have. I am so full of energy that I don't know what to do with myself. We've had people tell us that. So that is something that can be done quite easily. Dehydrated or dried, here I would like to recommend that you would only buy the organic or dehydrate yourself, okay? Reason being is because with dehydrated foods, they will usually use things like sulfites when they dehydrate them. And sulfites help to keep the color, and they also help to keep the flexibility of whatever has been dehydrated. How many of you have seen apricots that are dehydrated commercially? Have you seen apricots that are dehydrated? Okay. What do they look like? It's okay, you can talk to me. What do they look like? They're nice and orange, aren't they? And they're very soft. And that's the way we like it, because when we buy a fresh apricot, it's nice and orange and it's nice and soft, and we want our dried food to look just like the fresh food, don't we? Okay. How many of you have seen the organic dried apricots? Anyone seen them? Yeah? What do they look like? Dark, they're brown, okay? They don't look pretty, so most people walk by because they don't look pretty and we want the pretty ones, okay? The reason that the others look nice and pretty is because they are using sulfites, and sulfites are cancer causing. So buy your dehydrated foods organic or do them yourself. Doing them yourself, you know what you're doing to that food and you know the quality of it. Here we're going to lose about 2 to 5% of the nutritional value. So there's really not a large nutritional loss. This is a very good food to be consuming. Then we have frozen, okay? So ideally, this is something that you went and picked from your garden, minimal processing, and you put it straight away to the freezer, okay? We're going to lose anywhere from between 5 to 30% of the nutritional value of that food, 5 to 30%. The reason there is a variation there is because it is going to depend on what you did to that food after you picked it. So if you went and picked those green beans and you brought them in, but you left them sitting there on your counter for a day or so until you got to them and had a chance to wash them and get them all done up for the freezer, there's going to be nutritional loss that has taken place. So the sooner that you can get it into the freezer, the better. The least amount of processing, the better. In fact, I've had many people tell me over the years when we've been doing these classes that they have not done blanching to their foods before they've put them to the freezer, and those foods have turned out fine. So I decided this year, finally, I decided, well, I'm going to try it. I don't normally freeze my food. I usually dehydrate for winter. But I decided I was going to try green beans and do them without blanching and see how they turned out. And tried it. They turned out wonderful. They were perfect. So again, you've eliminated that step of heating that food and destroying precious enzymes. You've eliminated that, and you've retained more of your nutrition just taking it straight from the garden and putting it right away into the freezer. So if you do freezing, try maybe not doing the blanching step and see if that's something that works for you. Then we have steamed. By definition, steamed is where something is still crunchy. So if the green bean still has a crunch to it, if the carrot in your stir fry still has a crunch to it, then that's steamed. But if it's all limp, then that's cooked. Okay, so that's how you're going to know what the difference is. Here we're going to lose between 15 to 60% of the nutritional value. So you can see we're starting actually to get a significant amount of nutritional loss, especially if we're getting more toward this end. That is the more steamed it is, obviously the less nutritional value it's going to retain. Then we have raw leftovers. So here is where we decided to be very efficient and make up a salad that would last us for several days. And so we chopped it all up and prepared it for the week in advance. Here we're going to lose between 20 to 70% of the nutritional value. This is a fairly significant loss of nutrition from that food. So what I like to recommend is that just wash your vegetables, wash your lettuce, put it in the crisper bin or whatever, keep it in your refrigerator. It only takes a few seconds, a minute or so, to just chop up enough salad for you for your meal. And then you don't have leftovers staying around oxidizing. When you cut an apple, what does that apple start to do? Starts to turn brown. Every area that has been cut and exposed to oxygen begins to turn brown. So when you take that leaf of lettuce and you chop that all up for your salad, and you chop that tomato and you shred that carrot, all of those areas now that you have exposed to oxygen are going to start to oxidize. And when it oxidizes, what it's doing is causing what's called free radicals. Those free radicals do damage in our bodies. So we want to be careful because we don't want to go to the work of investing to have a wonderful salad, but only to make that salad then end up being toxic to our bodies or actually causing damage from the free radicals that we're taking in. Okay? So wash up all your vegetables, have everything clean, and then it's very easy to go through the week. You can make that salad very quickly. Then we have cooked. This is where usually most people start their food choice, is at cooked. Food choices start here. Here we're going to lose anywhere between 40 to 100% of the nutrients in that food. And you'll understand from what Rudy was sharing with you and from the scientific nutritional studies that I shared with you, as we cook the foods, we are losing nutrients, we are denaturing the food, and just like happened with the cats, just like happened with the guinea pigs and with the monkeys, we are going to start to see diseases taking place in our bodies because the nutrition that our body needs to run is not there. Cooked leftovers, what do you think? Why bother, right? Why bother? Cooked leftovers. You basically have about 100% loss of the nutrients. Try to just make whatever you're having cooked. Again, we're not promoting a 100% raw food diet, just the predominant portion of your diet to come in as raw foods. Usually, we like to encourage people aim for about an 80% raw food diet, 20% cooked food. That will keep your body in health. Now, you may not start there. You may right now, you might be doing like, I don't know, 90% cooked and 10% raw. That's okay. Just start. Next month, make 20% raw and 80% cooked. And next month, you can make 30% raw and 70% cooked. And start working your way toward a more raw food diet, okay? But when you have your cooked foods, just cook what you're going to need for the meal. That's the best way to do that. And then you'll make sure that you won't run into this problem of cooked leftovers. Then we have microwaved. We're going to lose between 90 to 99% of the nutrients, plus now we have the addition of toxins. The actual process of microwaving that food makes toxins. It damages molecules. And anything that is damaged, your body cannot use, and it becomes a toxin. It could have been a wonderful nutrient, but if that nutrient is coming in damaged, it's no longer usable, and it's actually a toxin in your body. Then we have commercially canned foods. We have basically the same problem, 100% loss of nutrients with the addition of toxins. Fried foods and foods with additives all fall into that same category. So again, I like to encourage people to eat on the upper half of this chart because that is where you're going to get the nutrition to keep your body well and healthy. Now let's take a look here. Living foods that we talked about, that's our sprouts and baby greens. That is what we call biogenic foods, biogenic foods. Does anyone know what biogenic means? Any ideas? No ideas. You know what biology means, okay? Biology, bios is the study, or bios, pardon me, is life, and ology is the study of, so it's biology, okay? Well, let's take a look here. Biogenic, the word biogenic, it comes from the Greek bios, meaning life, and genesis, bringing into being. Bringing into being, that's what genesis means. So literally, biogenic means bringing life into being. Isn't that wonderful? Foods that bring life into being in our body. That is what we call these living foods. They're biogenic foods. Now, raw and whole, this category here, juiced and consumed immediately, dehydrated or dried, and frozen, these are what we call bioactive foods. That means they're life-sustaining. So they will sustain our lives. These ones here will actually renew our lives. These ones here will sustain our lives, okay? We want to get about 25% of our diet coming from living foods. 25% roughly of our diet coming in. So sprouts, I'm going to share with you hopefully one of my passions, and that is sprouting. I love sprouting. And you are going to see how incredible sprouts are in our bodies. They are little powerhouses of nutrients, power-packed. And these foods that we're going to put into our bodies actually then help to renew life. So we want about 25% of our diet coming from those foods. Bioactive foods, we want about 50% of our diet, or 50, 55, 60, somewhere in there, coming from bioactive foods. Then we have this section here. This is where we're getting into the cooked. So we've got steamed, we got our raw leftovers, cooked and cooked leftovers. These are what we call biostatic foods, biostatic. That means they are actually life-slowing. So we want to be careful not to consume a large amount. Certainly no more than 25. Usually, like I said, we recommend only about 20% coming from cooked foods. So you want to be getting the bulk of your foods, preferably about 80% of your foods coming from raw living foods, okay? Those biogenic foods, those bioactive foods. Now, this group down here, what do you think that group is? Think we should have anything from that group? No, we shouldn't really. These are biocidic foods. That means they are actually life-destroying. Biocidic foods are life-destroying. We should not have foods from that category. So microwaved, commercially canned foods, fried foods, and foods with additives should really not be in our diet. Now, Dr. Edmund Bordo-Szekely, he did one of the greatest human experiments of the live food diet. This was conducted over a period of 33 years. He evaluated more than 123,000 people that were on this diet that I was just talking to you about, where they were getting about 25% coming from their biogenic foods, and they were getting about 50% or a little bit more coming from bioactive foods. And he found amazing results in benefiting the quality of people's health compared to the control group. That was quite something that he found with the people on that. That was over 33 years. Some other interesting statements that have been made. This actually comes from the Journal of the American Diet Association, a review of 206 human epidemiological studies and 22 animal studies on the relationship between fruits and vegetables and cancer risk found that raw vegetables are the #1 protective food against cancer. Isn't that great? Raw foods. Cancer is on the increase. We see so many of our patients coming in and they have cancer. Every age, it doesn't matter, from young all the way up to old and everything in between, cancer is on the increase. And here, right here, we're being told that vegetables, raw vegetables, are the #1 protective food against cancer. So that's something to include into your diet. Those raw foods, get them in there. This one here is coming from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. I'm not going to read the whole study, but I just want to share with you here. The present data indicate that the living food diet, that's what I was just talking to you about, the living food diet provides significantly more dietary antioxidants than does the cooked omnivorous diet, that's with meat in there, and that the long-term adherents to this diet have a better antioxidant status than do omnivores control subjects. That's the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. So they're talking and promoting the living food diet right there as having more antioxidants, being better for you. Those antioxidants, of course, so important in protecting us against disease. Let's take a look at another one, the Journal of Nutrition, 1992. Results suggest that this uncooked extreme vegan diet, they're calling it, causes a decrease in bacterial enzymes and certain toxic products that have been implicated in colon cancer risk. So that's actually coming from the Journal of Nutrition there, showing that this, they're calling it an extreme vegan diet, but the raw food diet, so including those raw foods, is lowering your risk of colon cancer. Very interesting. Now I want to show you another reason why we want to be careful in the food choices that we are putting into our body, and specifically why we want to be avoiding animal products. And that is because of something called pathogenic microorganisms. Pathogenic microorganisms. Does anyone know what a microorganism is? Do you know what an organism is? Okay, well, we're all living organisms, okay? So we're all organisms, living organisms. Microorganisms are small little living things, okay? So these are small little living things that we're going to talk about. Pathogenic, pathogenic. We talked about biogenic. What do you think pathogenic might mean? Okay, we know what genic might mean, right? What did genic mean? Where did that come from? Do you remember? Genic came from Genesis. Somebody said Genesis. And what does that mean? Genesis. Bringing into being. Bringing into being. Okay, so pathogenic. Any idea what patho might mean? Pathos. Disease. Okay, you guys are very good. Let's take a look here. So the word pathogenic comes from two Greek roots. Pathos meaning disease, and Genesis bringing into being. So literally bringing disease into being. So these are very tiny microorganisms, very tiny little living things that are bringing disease into being. Would you like to know where they're found? Okay, well, let's take a look. Okay, in milk, you get about, what's that number there? 5 million in 1 cup of milk. 5 million of these little living things that actually bring disease into being in your body. And by the way, that number continues to grow even if you keep it in your refrigerator. It grows exponentially, okay? So those little microorganisms that bring disease into being in your body are growing. Let's take a look. Butter, 7 million per cup. I know we don't eat it by the cup, but it's showing you for comparison's sake. So butter, again, huge amounts coming in. Eggs, look at that. 37 million per egg, 1 egg. Isn't that amazing? And most times, if we're consuming eggs, we're not just consuming 1 egg, because we'll have an omelet, for instance, that has a couple of eggs, or other foods where we're having several eggs at a time. 37 million. These are little organisms, little living things that will bring disease into being in your body. Cheese, look at this. 100 million per serving. By the way, how big is a serving of cheese? No, it's not the big chunk. Anybody know? Okay, 1 ounce. Small little 1 ounce cube. That's not the way we eat cheese in North America. That's not the way we like to eat cheese. We like to have lots of cheese, and we ask for double and triple cheeses on our pizzas and whatever we're eating cheese on. 100 million per serving of cheese. Ice cream, oh dear, look at that. 225 million per serving. Again, how big is a serving? It's not the triple ice cream cone. That's not a serving. We have to think about that when we're thinking of servings here. This is per serving. Beef, poultry, and fish. Look at this, 336 million per serving. I had a lady come, we were doing a seminar, back probably 8-10 months ago. We were in Nova Scotia, and this lady had been to a previous seminar that we had done a year earlier in that area. And she came and talked to me, and she said, you know, I just don't understand. When you guys came last, she said, I switched and I went onto a really good diet. And she said, I sleep well. I've always slept really well. And I felt so good on this diet and everything. And then she said, my daughter came home. Just the other day, my daughter came home. And my daughter asked me to make whatever, I don't remember what the dish was. It was something with meat. And she said, my daughter asked me to make this dish for her. And so I said, okay, I would make it for her. And so I made this dish for her. And she was eating, and she said, oh, Mom, come have some with me. And so eventually enough pleading, and Mom decided, okay, she would have some of this. And so she said, you know, I didn't just have one serving. I actually had 3 servings of whatever this meat dish was. And she said, and I went to bed that night, and she said, I laid there wide awake the whole night. And I don't understand why, because I sleep so good all the time. Why should that have happened? And I said, I know why that happened. You cleaned up your body for a whole year. You did everything really good. And your body was so happy and so thrilled. And all of a sudden, in one shot, bang, you threw in 3 times that amount of disease-producing microorganisms. Boom, almost 1 million of these guys came, 1 billion of these guys came in, and your whole system had to rev up to start defending you. So your whole metabolism was revved up. And she said, I never thought about it. All of those disease-producing microorganisms coming into the body. When our bodies are flooded with these little organisms, our immune system is constantly fighting and working to protect us. So that was quite something. Now, the average American meal, one meal has anywhere from 750 million to 1 billion of these disease-producing microorganisms per meal. Isn't that amazing? How many times per day do we normally eat? We're usually eating at least twice and sometimes 3 times. So think about the numbers of these disease-producing microorganisms coming in. Is it any wonder that we are seeing such disease taking place in our societies right now? Is it any wonder? Because we are pouring these microorganisms in by the billions. I want to show you the average vegan meal. 500 per meal. Well, that's not 500,000, that's 500, just a straight 500 per meal. You're going to get a few coming in because they're going to be on, you know, the leaves of lettuce and the tomato and things like that. But you're not going to get them in quantities. These kind of quantities, 500 per meal, your immune system can deal with that. Your body is meant to deal with that, is made to deal with that, designed to deal with that. But it cannot handle this kind coming in. It cannot handle billions of them coming in. And in time, they start to make our bodies sick. So, and there's the reference for that particular study. From Christ's Object Lessons, page 270, these thoughts are given to us. When the voice of God awakes the dead, he will come from the grave with the same appetites and passions, the same likes and dislikes that he cherished when living. God works no miracle to recreate a man who would not be recreated when he was granted every opportunity and provided with every facility. Christ's Object Lessons, page 270. God works no miracle to recreate us if we will not be recreated here and now with what he's given us. Very sobering. So you might be thinking right now, boy, oh boy, I have eaten a lot of enzyme-depleted, devitalized foods all of my life. Is there any hope for me? Well, I don't want you to get discouraged. Don't leave yet, because Rudy is going to share the good news with you. There's lots of hope for you.
All right, so carrying on from where Jeannie had left off, yes, there is hope. I want you to take a look at these red blood cells. This is a photograph that I took myself. A lady was in to have blood work done, and she was a lover of chocolate. She couldn't resist chocolate no matter what. And so she said, You're not going to tell me to quit chocolate, are you? And I said, no, I don't want you to think about quitting anything. What I want you to focus on is this. Add good things to what you are doing. In the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 21, the Apostle Paul said this, do not be overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. And so we've applied that principle at the center. And guess what we found? It works. So this dear sister, she added all the good first in her meal, good amounts of it, and then she'd have the stuff that she wasn't quite wanting to give up. But I told her, don't think about quitting, because if you could quit, you would have. And if you find that you're not quitting or you're failing, you're going to become discouraged. That's not a good thing to do when you're trying to overcome things, is become discouraged. And that, by the way, that's the devil's favorite tool, discouragement. So don't be discouraged, I said, just add the good. Well, she was in to see me. You see all this right here? This is fungus in the blood. This will cause somebody to crave starches, crave the sugars, crave all the things that they shouldn't be having. And so when that happens, a person almost can't control themselves. They've got to have the sweet. She'd say, well, I'd be at the Christmas party and I would eat half the plate of chocolates, she'd say, at the Christmas party. So she followed the recommendations I give her, came back to see me in 2 months, and this is what happened. You notice the difference? There's the new blood, there's the old blood. Look at that. She said, I don't desire chocolates anymore. She said, I was at the Christmas party and everybody said, did you quit chocolates? And she said, no, I didn't quit. And they said, well, you haven't had any. She said, I didn't quit. I just lost my desire for them. Isn't that amazing? By adding the good and adding it first and foremost in her meal, she lost the desire. Gone. And she was thrilled herself. She'd also lost quite a bit of weight, energy levels coming right back up again. Beautiful. Another man, he had a lot of hemorrhoids, real problem. He had really poor liver function. He was losing minerals from his bones as well. And this is his blood work. And I have permission to show these slides, by the way, of their blood work. I always ask people for that. But he did the same thing. He decided to change his diet by adding good things. And in 2 months, he was back to see me. Look at the difference in this blood. There's the new blood, there's the old blood. Do you see a difference? That is absolutely amazing. And does this happen? This happens if you're a living human being, a living organism, your system replaces its cells on a regular basis. But you have to ask yourself, what kind of cells is my system replacing itself with? Because if the new cell is not as healthy as the old cell, or even if it's equal, it will still not produce perfect health. You want to be able to remake the cells into perfectly healthy cells. So then here's a man, he was in his early 70s. Notice up here, this is lung cancer. And there are his clavicles right up through there. This lung is eaten away. When he came into the office, he was sitting on the chair like this. He was given 3 weeks to live. And so the doctors basically sent him home. So he heard about us, came to see us, and put him on a very special diet, given 3 weeks to live. This man followed the diet to a T. And here's what happened in, this was in 6 weeks. Look at the lung. The cancer shrinking. His clavicles are still up a little bit, but he came back, he brought the x-ray back with him, and he was given 3 weeks to live, but this is 6 weeks and 2 days later. And this man is in the office, and he's almost breathing normally. And he says, well, what should I do now? I said, you keep doing what I gave you to do. And so he said, okay, so he'd get home, and wouldn't you know it, friends of his would come over to visit, or they'd call and say, I heard that this heals cancer and this heals cancer. Well, this brother, what he would do is he'd say, well, I'll check here. So he'd give me a call. And he'd say, well, my friend said this is good for cancer. What do you think? I said, what did I give you? He said, okay, I hear you. So he stopped calling me, and he would just do the diet that I gave him. And so when he did, he came back to see me. This will be 12 weeks now. Came back to see me, 12 weeks. Look at that. Totally healed. Given 3 weeks to live. What happens when you put in living food into the system? It's amazing how it responds. The body gets what it's desired, what it was made to have, and the body heals. Notice his clavicles? Instead of being like this now, breathing like this, he was like this. Early 70s. So is there hope? Absolutely. As long as you're breathing, there's hope. We don't know what the Lord is going to do. So we always tell people, come and see us. Come and see us. Now there's all three pictures lined up side by side, beginning to end. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Totally amazing. Now, your body is like a garden. Does this soil look healthy? This is the actual picture. This is not a black and white picture. This is soil. See the green grass right over here? This is soil. Does that look healthy? Some people said yes. Some people are not gardeners in here maybe. I'll show you what healthy soil looks like. Do you see a difference? There's the healthy soil. The healthy soil, if you have just straight rock soil, a lot of gray soil, and you put a plant in, the plant can grow for a bit, but it can't get everything that it does need. But it'll send out its roots and up the leaves, but it only goes down so far. Unless that plant can reach good soil, it will stop growing. Now, it's very much, unless the roots of the plant can get into good soil, it will die. You can see the difference right over here illustrated in this little picture. Here's the grass really thin over here, but over here, it's really doing well. And as you take a look at these well-watered greens, plants grow thick and healthy where there is good quality soil and proper amounts of moisture. That's an important thing to consider, and we're going to get into some of that in some of these presentations. So you can see the roots. Here's a cutaway section of this grass. Look at those roots into that healthy soil. Your body is just like that. Your organs are like plants in a garden, and your blood is the soil. If you have a problem with your garden, do you just say, oh, well, that's just poor soil, and there's nothing I can do about it? Or do you add nutrients to the soil, add minerals and things to the soil? What do? If you make the soil healthy, then your plants are going to be healthy. It's the same thing in the human body. If you make the blood healthy, then the organs are going to become healthy, because the blood brings in the nutrients to every single organ and it takes away the poisons. So if you've got really healthy blood, you've got a really healthy body. You can't have one without the other. Most people's blood is very, very toxic. So now the Lord said this to Moses, you must be careful to obey all the commands of the Lord your God, following his instructions in every detail. Stay on the path that the Lord your God has commanded you to follow. Then you will live long and prosperous lives in the land you are about to enter and occupy. That is a promise. And not many people get to claim that promise because they're living, and always, I should say, they're dying outside of the laws of life. God gave us laws that were designed for our protection, our longevity, our way to have better, clearer minds, and all of these things you're going to learn more and more of as we go on and on in the lectures. So we hope you're going to be around for those things to take place. In the meantime, take a look at all these foods. Grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. These foods, prepared in as simple and natural a manner as possible, are the most healthful and nourishing. They impart a strength, a power of endurance, and a vigor of intellect that are not afforded by a more complex and stimulating diet. Remember Francis Pottinger's cats. Remember the guinea pigs. Remember all the tests that have been carried out. What does it tell you? What God gave in the beginning is the best for mankind. The very best. And now, here's a thought for you. You are what you choose. Don't those foods look good? Delicious. Hope you got a blessing out of this evening's presentation. Thank you.